Aadit Sheth, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and super excited to listen to all your story at 19 and Twitter, stuff, and then all of that. Just like there's so much. So, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Harlaksh, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm super pumped, super excited to be here and share my personal stories and been learning a lot from you and your Twitter as well and all your insights on podcast growth. Super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, you can tell everybody that I've spoken for the last 30 minutes and not let you speak, so that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah. We just started this podcast, but we've been speaking for the past 30 minutes, and he's been sharing all of the secrets, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, other than
Yeah.
taking down, all these things in the corner, like the next thread is going to be one of these. Cool. So Adit, yeah, we all know, bro. Like, where have you come from? Like, who's this? Who's this? First of all, apologies, public apologies, because I keep on messing up your surname. Okay, so in case in the
Yeah.
future, 10 years from now, I say Adit Shah. Okay, and not Aadit Sheth. Just like this is like my 10-year pass on this. But just tell us
Yeah.
who you are, man. Like where have you come from? What is this Twitter sudden big following? How did you figure that out? What even got you interested and excited to get into that space? Because not a lot of 19-year-olds are doing that.
Yeah. I'd love to share this. So I every periodically, like even maybe at like follower milestones or like monthly or something, I do sit down and quite like maybe think about this. How did I initially start and why? Why am I doing this? Like where is this going? Where did it start? So I think I did this recently, and as far as I can remember, it was basically to find some stimulating conversations and stimulating content online where I was feeling that I wasn't having a lot of that. This was, by the way, this is for context. This was during the time when the COVID pandemic was really, there was a lockdown in my country as well. So I wasn't having much social interaction. And as you know, we all know we were spending a lot of time online, a lot of time just consuming content. And and at this point in time, I was thinking, um, what's the best use of my time, most productive use of my time? I was a huge consumer of Ali Abdal's content, who's in fact in London, and hopefully I get to meet him sometime soon. But I was a huge consumer of his content, learned a lot about productivity, and then he started creating content on creating YouTube videos on how to actually do what he does, and how to start making YouTube videos or start writing online. And that's basically my gateway of discovering David Perel, who's the god of writing online,
Mm.
and discovering other people such as Jack Butcher, who I've been inspired by lately, and Sahil Bloom. And to be honest, I've from a young age, I think this has been my kind of motto, or my kind of approach to a lot of things in life. And I saw Chamath to kind of hint this as well. It's basically, just take the top 1%, look at the best people in the world, and just basically copy them.
Mm.
Obviously, you don't want to plagiarize, you don't want to copy content. I knew that I was new to this game. I knew that I'd been consuming a lot of content, and just like in sports, just like in business, in a lot of things, just by consuming content and reading about it, you don't become the best. It's about iterations, and this is what Harlaksh and I, what we were talking about right earlier before this podcast started, is like a lot of it is putting the iterations. Maybe two things happen. One, you start losing that imposter syndrome. In the first time, you might be like, who am I to actually do this? As you put in the reps, you kind of get known for this. I don't even know why I'm known for Twitter growth.
Right.
It's maybe because now people start saying that I'm known for Twitter growth, that I myself can understand that I'm known for Twitter growth, right? So
No, no, no.
it's a lot of things
Just
happen.
for reference for everybody, he's demonstrated that you can grow on Twitter. Okay, so it's like you've really gone from like I don't know where you were when you started with all this. So probably like just like all of us at like I don't know
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
5,000 or something like that, and then probably like scale that up to what you hit 50 though. I think that happened some days back.
yeah,
Yeah, so fifty
yeah.
thousand follow.
I started with zero. I don't
Exactly.
think I had my parents, my mom followed me like say a month ago when I had 25,000 followers, and I just told her like, mom, like now things are starting to pick up. But and she got excited for like 5 seconds, and then she's like, okay, cool, I gotta go right now. But yeah, but otherwise that's a bit about how it started, and just like just looking at my inspirations, which I'm quite grateful for. I'm
Hmm.
grateful for the people that I'd been following, the people that I'd been consuming content from, because I would say that's a huge they're a huge part of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and for people who are listening, and for anybody else who's going to listen as well, and I think from your perspective as well, I think there's a difference between, we're not discussing a vanity metric, guys. Here, we're not talking about like Twitter saying, okay, it's like whatever he's saying, 0 to like 50,000. It's not about the 50,000. I think the thing that's like sort of missed by a lot of people here is the context of the 50,000. So like if you look at I'm just speaking now in terms of like to the people who are listening here. If you look at Adit's content, okay, and if you look at who engages with that content, who are the people who sort of talk to him, or he talks to, um and so you actually start to figure that there is a lot of the crowd of like founders, money managers, high achievers, and like he was saying, top 1%, all those kinds of guys, which I think for a 19-year-old, that's a powerful thing to have, right? And I'd like to, of course, have your view on this. That it's not just about the followers. Like you could probably be at like I don't know, maybe even just 5,000. But it's the quality and the context with which people are identifying with you
Yeah.
when you're having conversation with. How important do you think that is versus the follower count?
Yeah, it's the most important thing. It's way more important than any number. A lot of people that are founders have um, crazy like deep networks, deep and and a network that they're well invested in and don't have a lot of followers. But as long as it makes them work, it makes them productive and makes their business work in an efficient way, and it makes them have fun as well, because you want to have your network to have fun with, hang around with, and just like jam out on ideas with. And I think that's the most important. And I've seen people that are trying to grow audiences as well, having those networks, but only because it's going to get more traction to the business. It's a very
Hmm.
businessy kind of tactic that they're going for. But I think their existing network is already there, and that network can come around at maybe 1,000 followers as well, 5,000 as well, and even 50,000 plus. So that number is not always very directly related to the quality of your network.
Yeah, I've seen that. Like I've seen that a lot of people who do, of course, have a lot of followers, but then, if you start looking at their comments and if you start looking at who's interacting with the content, like the engagement and this and that, and you start seeing it's not like the quality that we're talking about here, right? So VCs, founders, all the people who are already successful, people who are like, let's say, people like, of course, Sahil and like all these, of course, Jack and all these people, but um, and it also improves your own conversations. Like you start looking at things, you put in the work as well, because when you're speaking to these kind of people, you really need to up your game. You're not speaking to another 19-year-old, right? You're speaking to somebody who's really out there. So do you think that's also been a thing where you've actually how important do you think that has been, like your own conversation, the quality of conversations now, maybe in the last 6 months that you've been having in your regular life, in your day-to-day life? Do you think this has informed that, like it's helped you sort of improve those conversations as well?
Yeah, I think podcasts has helped a lot with this, because like podcast helps me just myself. It helps me break down my thoughts, and it helps me ask questions that maybe I might not have thought of. And just generally people are curious. A lot of people are curious about different things, and my takes on that. And sometimes I don't ask myself those questions, and other people encourage me, even via Twitter DMs actually. I think a great thing about having uh, these many connections and these many conversations under tweets, like I'm talking about those mentions and replies, is that you have that feedback loop, obviously, but you also have a lot of people asking you questions like, how do you do this? How do you do this? Can you connect me with this person? And
Mm,
that's actually one of my favorite things, connecting people. Because even actually, my favorite thing is connecting people with people without them asking me to do so.
mm,
I just know that this person is going to really have fun with this other person, because they have either a similar opinion or rather contrasting opinions on a certain topic, and that's super fun to kind of just to see how it plays out. Because a lot of people, like, at least this is what I've seen, that Twitter is one of the most positive sum, and I'm sure you've heard this word being thrown around a lot, right?
yep.
One of those positive sum communities on the internet. And just like any social media platform, you can find everything from positive sum players to drama. But I just think that where in this space, where you find a lot of positivity, and even with people with contrasting opinions, they're still going to find a way to have that conversation, that mature conversation. And now I'm kind of like digressing, but essentially what I'm saying is I love connecting people, and that's one of the benefits that I found, just having so many people in the network.
Cool. And yeah, so you'll have to tell us a bit about the opportunities, because you then like, I think did collaboration with another friend of yours who you met via Twitter, is what I'm presuming, and you guys then sort of course figured out what to let's say, create. So tell us a bit more about that. I know it's Maker's Mark, but I don't really know the contents of it beyond the point. You'll have to tell us that. Who is this person you collaborated with? How did that come about? What is Maker's Mark to begin with? And like, um, what are you doing? Like, who's this for?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, okay. So to begin with, let me start with what Maker's Mark is, and then I'll get into the context and how I met Brandon, who I'm running this with. But yeah, with Maker's Mark, it's basically our community, where founders and growth people, so growth marketers and just makers in general come together, that are all trying to build their audiences. So this helps with two main things. That this is how we like to break it down in Maker's Mark. One is get more traffic to their businesses. So a lot of the founders are actually running small SaaS companies, or just quit their job, and they're making decent money from their SaaS company. So they have the money to invest in themselves, in their online audiences. Hence Maker's Mark. Um, and the second thing is build those connections out with other people, that as it's quite obvious that if they're in Maker's Mark, they don't already have like an existing online audience. So naturally they haven't seen these other people
Mm,
on Twitter.
mm,
So this is like this one-stop shop where everyone meets, and we were just having a blast, to be
mm,
very honest with you. Like, we finished our first cohort last Friday. A lot of good responses, a lot of great feedback as well, positive, negative, everything together. Like, I'd like to be completely honest, right? So we've got some things to improve on as well, because it's, as we said, first iteration. um but one thing, like, I can speak all day about Maker's Mark, but one big change that I saw, between the first session and last session. First session, I remember when I was going into the session, I was telling Brandon, bro, like, we have to make this very presentable, very professional. We got to speak in this way, because this is how I was taught in school. Like, you got to make these presentations. But what I've realized in the last session, dude, I could not be more pumped. Like, I could not be more pumped. We're just like hanging out. I always reach there 15 minutes early, because people are excited to just chat. A lot of people from London as well, who I'm planning to meet in the future,
mm,
in next week or the week after that. But it's literally, I put this message in the Discord channel, and I couldn't, I mean it completely. I'm being completely honest. I was like, it felt more like a family in session 6,
mhm.
and more like a professional presentation in session 1,
Right.
because I didn't know those people and stuff. And just, yeah, I was just jamming out towards the end. So this is how I kind of like to summarize Maker's Mark. Very cheesy, but kind of like a community family kind of vibe, and it's been a blast.
Hmm. All right,
Yeah,
yeah, you got to give us the origin story. So we know that the
yeah, yeah,
Maker's Mark, in terms of like, it helps you grow, and let's say you said helps you get more visibility. And I think your experience, and I think Brandon's experience with like growing your own things on Twitter, especially, has been like, of course, the experience that you're drawing from all this. But how did it begin though? Like, what was the like, how do you get in touch? Where is the ideation bit that came out of this, and like, how do you decide to sort of launch something like this?
yeah, yeah. So with Brandon, how I met him was, I think we both were just about to start. He was at around 2000, maybe like a couple months into his content creation game, just putting himself online. I had just started, so I was like less than 100 followers. I reached out to him because I was kind of struck. I was kind of surprised, like, who is this dude? Crushing it. He goes to Columbia, so probably studies a lot as well, and is doing a lot of these content creation things. And he's like, I was already consuming Ali Abdal's content.
Mm,
I saw Brandon, I saw me. I'm like, this guy's one step closer.
mm,
So why should I'm not like, meeting Ali Abdal would be amazing, but I have so much to learn from Brandon first,
mm,
right? So
mm,
this is my approach. So I kind of reached out to him. I was like, yo, you're crushing it. And I'm at uni as well. We later went on to realize that we both are the same age. So he's
right.
19 as well, second year of uni. So we connected on multiple different kind of similarities and just like mindset similarities rather, because we both go to uni,
Mm.
and we've seen that a lot of our friends, like, they're not they're not all interested in the same kind of things that we are,
Yep.
because we know we both are very just. I think one thing that I've realized is you find a lot of similarities with people
Mm.
that have a similar information diet,
Mm.
and not everyone for example follows Ali Abdal, and that's completely fine, but Brandon did, for example, and we could connect just through that regard, and we connected. We both started growing our audiences, kind of just shared content with each other, and then experienced a couple of code-based courses. So I
Right.
took another code-based course. He took another one as well, and we've realized that it was just a fantastic medium through which you could get content as fast as possible in not content, but maybe like advice and tactics
Mm.
into your system, into your kind of production system, as well as that added level, that added benefit of community.
Mm. Mhm.
So if I were to take, an info product or buy like an expensive, like, $100 or $200 info product, I'll get all of that information. I might even get access to a community, but I wouldn't have that live to live, that live one-to-one interaction, or that live interaction with the makers of that product, right?
Mm. Mm.
So that's what we realized, that Brandon, for example, he joined power writing. He did Rite of Passage with Dave Brel as well, and that one-to-one connection that he had with those makers,
Mm.
that he was like that's a game changer for me, and that's something that we kind of wanted to replicate as well, sharing our knowledge, but also wanted to have that live interaction, um, which, to be honest, in hindsight, people have really appreciated.
Mm.
So definitely something that we want to keep up. We want to filmmakers mark the community with a lot of asynchronous content, a lot of content they can consume in their own time, gain the knowledge, but in their own time, but also have that those jam out sessions and those breakout sessions, just having those thought provoking conversations.
Nice. Yeah, I like how you were so open about, approaching people like that. And I think that's also the power of Twitter, and like how the platform is and how people behave on there, that you can have open conversations, and the worst case is somebody doesn't respond back. You can always like nudge them back again at a later point. And I think, in fact, this podcast that we're doing right now is an example of that. I think I sent you a DM sometime back, and I'm like, yeah, okay, he's got his life, he's doing his stuff, and that's what typically happens with me as well. I'm like, okay, somebody sent me a DM, and maybe there's a gap, but then I'm like, okay, let's like have like maybe, and I think I sent to you like maybe a tweet somewhere, or you put out a tweet, and I just replied back saying, hey, just check your DMs. And it's just one of those
Yeah,
things where you checked and you said, okay, cool, let's get on the pod. And I feel like that's that Twitter thing, like that behavior on Twitter, is a big part of how these collaborations generally have been happening. But yeah, they're glad to know that you've got that approach as well. That's cool. But you gotta help us out with 19. So you're in UCL right now, right? What are
yeah,
you
yeah.
studying right now?
So I'm studying mechanical engineering, and obviously, I started last year. I started in year one. Forgot about it like for a while, and then I had my first session last week. So I kind of had this like re-realization that, okay, Adit, we gotta hone down now, let's focus on engineering, because these problem sets aren't gonna solve themselves.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so a
Interesting.
lot of that stuff going on. Yeah.
And then you've also got, well, you also play cricket, is what I like. I don't know. You play some sport, like cricket, right?
Yeah, so I play for fun now. I play for fun. I play badminton for fun. I head to the gym as well,
Yeah.
3 times a week, just
It's
to kind
like
of like get just kind of yeah, just get the stress out of the system. I guess is one of the best ways to do it.
we were discussing that, I think, on Twitter as well. Yeah, I think I replied back to one of your tweets about lifting weights or something like that. Yeah, but it's good. Like, yeah, for sure. I think like what I'd love to know from you is like, okay, you're 19. Okay, you've built up a bit of like, let's say, a conversation engine is what I call it, or like a connection engine, or like
Right,
something like
right,
that.
right.
You've got yourself out there, which most people struggle with throughout their lives, where putting yourself out there is a big deal for a lot of people. You've already done that, which is like, okay, of course, like big, and it's not like a big achievement, okay, but I just feel like it's
Yeah,
something where you're taking your shots, right? You're like, you're you're betting on the fact that maybe one of these tweets goes somewhere, maybe like five of them go to the right people or whatever. You're just enjoying that piece. But now, of course, the question is, where are you going with this? Like, what's happening? I'm sure you ask yourself the same question almost like on the daily. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you gotta what are some ideas that are coming to your mind? Like, where does somebody go from where you are at maybe like 50,000? And I'm sure it's not the 50,000 Twitter followers, but also the impressions and the profile visits and the
yeah,
opportunities that you get, and the people you speak to. It's almost like you can do a lot of things, but then life is also happening, and you're doing a bunch,
yeah.
in your own life. And then, so how are you playing that game? Like, what's your thought process around that?
Yeah, yeah. Firstly, I just want to say that conversation engine, love that word. I'm going to be stealing that from you. But otherwise, yeah, I think you said it really well. You explained it that I'm just taking shots, right? And what I have in store or what I have planned is not very concrete at the moment. Um, like I love like riffing off on like business ideas and just ideas with my friends, but what I'm doing with this entire Twitter thing and what I've been doing in the past year is again comes down to two things, two main benefits for me. One I'll tell you, which is super simple, the network aspect that we talked a lot about in the past 20 minutes. But
Yes.
lastly, or secondly, and I'm sure there are more that I'm missing, but the second is it's just gonna give me that extra distribution, that extra leverage for any of the shots I take in the future,
Mm,
right? So it's just I'm more likely to succeed, whatever success is. I don't know if it's a number or if it's like, oh, these many dollars, my business is going to make this much, or if it's like, oh, it's going to reach these many people, or whatever it is. I just think that having this inbuilt distribution, um, or just people to talk to, having these conversations, have people to go to advice for. Now I have you,
mm,
right?
mm.
I have you. I can ask you for any. Hopefully, I can ask you for anything. I can have these conversations,
Correct.
right? So it's more of that. I mean, I don't try to put a lot of pressure on myself with like other, because a lot of people ask me this, and I love this question. Like I ask myself as well, where am I going with this? Ideas keep coming,
Yes.
but I think one thing that's quite solid and quite confirmed in my mind is that whatever shot that I'm gonna about to take, I think um, this advantage is definitely gonna help out, and I'm definitely grateful for it. I'm definitely grateful for it. But let's see where the future holds. Like I think when people say, like, what are you going to do with this inbuilt distribution, and like, good job on the achievement, and which is why I love that you didn't call it an achievement, because I
Yep.
definitely don't think it's an achievement yet. I think it's just getting started, because I haven't done anything with it, have
Yeah.
I?
Sure.
So it's definitely like just getting started, and I wanna take this the long way, man. Still, just
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I get it. I hear where you're coming from, and that's why I said, like, I don't call it an achievement per se, because it's like,
yeah,
it's nothing done, but it's more like, it creates those. I think it creates the environment in which you can, like, have. So when you're talking about it, like, just in my head, I'm like, when you're talking about success, what you actually mean is like, when you're going in for a conversation, when you want to, like, let's say maybe raise funding, or when you like, it's one of those things where you have that chip on your shoulder, right? This acts as that. Like, it's like, okay, when you sit down and you're like, okay, what do I have to bring to the table? And then it's just like, okay, I've got something going, which otherwise I
yeah,
think wouldn't be possible, because then you're only relying, maybe, of course, on money, and your, of course, the family networks and this and that, that all of us Asian families have. But yeah, like, very different from
that's
the
true.
very different from our American friends who are like, anybody else around the world, because they have to fend for themselves from, like, really, in the beginning itself. But um, yeah, this helps, I think, when we talk about this. So yeah, I like your very like, inconclusive approach to this, because I think that's important at this point of time, overall. But yeah, I'm sure, like, a lot of advice gets thrown at you, so I'm going to save you.
Yeah.
I'm going to save you a little more of that. All right.
I got one more benefit, by the way.
Go
Just
for
just
it.
quickly, I wanted to say, I think um I think at this point, like any country that I want to visit, I'll have like someone to like kind of hang out with, so I'll never be a loner. I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
one advantage as well.
that's true.
Yeah, like it's just it's something that I laugh about very often, but when I kind of actually think about it,
Hmm.
it's kind of insane.
Hmm.
Like think about it. Any country that you go to, you like have someone to hang out with, and I wouldn't be able to say that, a year ago. So it's definitely, that I would call an achievement. I
Yeah,
have a friend in every country. I would say, well, not every country, but like a lot of countries.
you remind me of Levels. What is that guy's name? Peter, is it like remoteok.io? And yeah, like he's like he effectively he can walk into any city in the world and be like, yeah, and he can actually like just like connect with people directly, saying, hey, I just see that you're in Bombay right now, like okay, or you're in Mexico,
Yeah.
whatever. You literally do that, but yeah, you remind me of that kind of global sort of, let's say, thing. Um,
Mm,
Interesting. So, I'd actually like to ask you about the people that you learn from, because I think, and not like information or knowledge, because I think that's like pretty wide. I just feel people who
yeah.
you like, whose behavior you like. And the reason I make that distinction is because a lot of people look at the end result of people and their content, and they try to rate it based on that. But there is another thing that I think which is underrated in the generally the business world is the behavior of somebody, in terms of what they do when they're transacting with you, or when they're having conversation with you, or when they're connecting with you. And this is something that I actually wrote down on Arvid Kahl's tweet, and immediately followed it up with like a apology, because I had a back issue, and I was very snappy with that tweet back to him. But the essence of the tweet was around this, that he said that the best way to read a person is through the books, to see that what books that person's reading. And I said, like, I've known enough millionaires and successful people to know that that's not true. And he said, here, why do you say that? And my response was around, you'll see people's true behavior when you transact with them. You'll know more about a person through a transaction, or like a business deal, because at that point, if when $1 million is on the line, okay, everything else goes out of the window, right? Every
Mm,
other kind of behavior goes, every other kind of filter goes out of
mm,
the window, because there's real money, real risk, real, like,
mm.
life is happening beyond the glossy version of it. So
Right, right.
in that light, okay, whose behavior on social or in your interactions over, maybe the last year or so, because you've connected with a lot of people, like, whose behavior do you admire, at least publicly, like, or people who you've interacted with?
So, firstly, I think I agree with you about the business deal thing. So I haven't personally had a lot of business deals when I can agree out of experience, but I was having a conversation with one of my friends about our parents making deals, and about just people in markets making deals and stuff. And I think, yeah, you do see like a different side of people, for the good or bad, like of just like people making, when money's on the line, stuff gets real essentially. But I'll tell you two people that I admire and why I admire them,
Sure.
right? So one of them is Sahil Bloom, who we talked about in this episode already, in this conversation. And one thing that I really like, he's got tons of great, attributes and great things that he's up to. But one thing that I really love is how accessible and approachable he is. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well. If you DM him, he'll take all the time in the world. Like, he'll take his time, but he'll get back to you as long as the DM is kind, or even constructive. If it's negative, it's fine. But as long as it's constructive, I think he's going to get back to you. And he's quite open about it. He's quite public about it. So I think that accessibility and that openness, even at that stage,
Mm.
having those many, like I'm telling you, and I'm sure you get a lot of DMs as well with like podcasts and with like requests. Like, it's very difficult to keep up with them.
Mm.
And I'm sure he spends a lot of time and a lot of attention to detail that he has. He inputs in this. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think it's a fantastic thing, and something that I wish to replicate, which is nice because it kind of refers back to the things that I said, like about I try to like look at the top 1%, see
Mm.
what they do, and try to replicate it. So that's something that I've learned from Sahil Bloom. And second one is from Chris. Chris,
Mhm.
I don't wanna get his last name wrong, but
Mm.
he's at Yale. He's working at Goldman Sachs right now,
Oh
graduate
yeah,
from Yale. His
the
surname is
frameworks guy, is he
his
the frameworks guy?
frameworks guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
so he's
got it.
Chris. Yeah, Chris HLAD at. So that's his at. And what I love about him is how determined he is. I was at about like 10,000 followers. He was just starting off, maybe at around 1,500, 2,000, and we had a chat. Super bright guy, very eloquent as well. He had all these amazing conversations with, like, people that started $1 billion companies, and and his network was really solid.
Mhm.
And I understood that. And he's like, just from the way he was talking and the way we were setting goals on that call, this was our initial call,
Right.
right? um, I knew that this guy's gonna crush it. He's
Mhm.
gonna crush it because he's like, Adit, so this is what I'm gonna do. Thank you for all these tactics. Because I had figured out, I had been, well, I was at 10,000 followers. So I was on the platform for already like 6, 7, maybe even more months. And he had started more recently at least. So he's like, okay, Adit, so I'm gonna follow all of these things that you've told me, and this is what you should do as well. So he had some ideas just from that conversation as well, and I knew he was gonna crush it because he put in the reps. He put in the reps. He put in 1 to 2 threads a week. I know initially, dude, I would text him after every thread that he put out. I'm like, bro, this is not getting traction. Like, what are you up to? Like, what's happening? And I'm being completely honest over here. And he's like, dude, one day it's gonna work. Like, trust me, one day it's gonna work. And you know how he gets his most viral thread has like 30,000 plus likes.
Mhm.
I think he was getting maybe like 50 likes per thread at that point, even
Right.
less. And I'm like, why are you even putting these many hours? Because his threads are very well researched,
Mm.
going down rabbit holes and stuff, talking to people. I'm like, bro, like, hopefully this pays off, like, I trust you, it's going to pay off. And then it did. And then it did. And you can still see it does. So I think it's about that goal setting aspect that I love about him, and that determination. Like, no matter what, like, I know this is how it works. It's an algorithm, it's a computer. This is just how it works. And obviously, he improved over time. It's not the same quality as he was producing at that time, but that's something that I kind of started implementing recently as well. Just kind of that. It's less of hustle culture and more of just like, this is, I know this is good for me. It's gonna be good for me, and I'm gonna do it. Like,
Got it.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, you've got the two proper people on this, because there's a lot of other people as well. But I think with regards to summarizing a lot of important concepts, and, like, the way I spoke about behavior. Yeah, like when I think of these two people, for sure, like, they have that, let's say, they have a presence about them which is like not about, let's say, which is slightly productive, and, like, it's got that vibe, which is interesting, because if you think of Twitter, you'd not really think of the vibe beyond the point. You just think, because it's like a lot of, like, writing things. But in a way,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you summed it up earlier as well. You said, yeah, there is this positive sum side, or like there's this people out there who sort of, let's say, you feel like, okay, yeah, whatever you're in that crowd, it just feels right. And I think, yeah, like, if that's the way you're informing it, for sure. um yeah, for the people who you mentioned, I think for anybody who's listening, if you go and, like, check out these guys, Sahil Bloom and Chris. We don't want to mess up the surname, so we'll write down in the description. Sorry, Chris. Yeah, we'll just check them out. And DM them and say, "Adit sent you." Okay. So yeah, I think let's quickly jump right into. Tell us about your favorite podcast, buddy. What's the podcast stuff happening? Are you reading any books? Are you a book reader? Not a reader? What's happening on that front?
yeah. So, huge consumer of like articles and Twitter threads, and well, lately Twitter threads, because I've been working on a lot of my personal Twitter threads. So I've realized that if I'm producing that type of content, yeah, I mean, I actually started consuming that type of content, which led me to produce that type of content. So that's Twitter threads, articles. Not so big on books. I have read a few books in the past, but I'm a big fan of like just like summaries and like video summaries of those, because I, at the end of the day, like, I want to implement some of those tactics that I learned from books. Like, obviously, if you're reading books for entertainment, go ahead. But if you're reading books to get some tactics or frameworks or mental models, and I know all these words have been thrown around on Twitter like way too much, but just kind of like
Sure.
things that you can implement directly in your life. I just think like summaries are amazing for that, because they someone else has done the work for you. So but books are great. I know a lot of people are big fans of books in on Twitter as well. So I don't want to say bad things about them and get on the bad side. But basically, podcasts.
Oh
I
yeah.
love podcasts. This is where where I was saying books are great for entertainment. Oh my god, podcast, my first million, and I'm probably going to be the biggest, their biggest. I don't know, advertiser or whatever. I'm promoter. I love it so much. It's fantastic. A great source of entertainment, as well as giving me perspective of what businesses can do in the real world in different geographical locations, because
Mm.
I'm one person who's based out of Belgium, living in London, I have friends around me. Maybe that I have some insights into what they tell me about their parents' businesses or parents' work life, or my parents tell me about their work life. But what the guests on My First Million and what Sam Parr and Shan Puri tell me about what goes on in Silicon Valley and around the world, I'm not going to get that info anywhere else. I'm kind of surprised that it's free. At this point, it's one of the few things that I'd be paying for if they do go paid or if they have a paid subscription. But fantastic, yeah, it just gives me a different perspective on life, and obviously you want to value money, but you realize also like how other people are treating money, how wealthy people treat money. And again, comes down to what we were talking about again, earlier. Study the top 1%, see what they're doing. That's what My First Million kind of allows me to do.
Right. I'm going to put you on a spot now. Okay. This
Tell
is
me, go ahead.
no, but it's in your, it's right in your area, and people whoever listens to this are going to love this. So, um, I'm going to. So you've got all your growth on Twitter. Okay. I know people who are going to listen to this will want to grow on Twitter. Okay. Uh,
Right.
we want you to tell us. This is like me collectively, like echoing the 7 people who are going to listen to this. It's like I want to go and grow on Twitter. Okay,
Right.
followers, connections, influence, reputation, share my story, all the good stuff that comes from all of that, right? Like all the 7 other people all who listen to this podcast. Okay, hopefully there are a little more, but okay, we'll go with 7 as just like a hypothetical number.
Yeah.
So
Safe bet.
safe bet for sure. Like mom one, my dog second. Like this is like I'll probably get to 7 by like I don't know, just like my building or something. But okay, so we're sitting at like all of us most likely sitting at like anywhere between 500 to let's say 1500 or 2000. That's like your typical, let's say, typical crowd that hasn't made it but wants to make it. Okay, let's just go with that. They put a little bit of work or they have like a sort of starting point. And then now you've got this thing where you got to tell us in the next whatever 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 points, 10 points, whatever. How would you approach this? What do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? In no particular order as such, but like just generally like a step by step. Um, Give us enough so that we are able to sort of at least get some things going for ourselves. And then of course we can come and follow you and then read all your Twitter threads about how to do all this stuff. But like give us enough to be like, okay, what are we looking at, what are we looking to avoid, what are we looking to do, some key important bits here and there, some important things that we should keep in mind so that at least we get on the trajectory of moving in the right direction when it comes to growing on Twitter. Yeah, go for it. All yours.
Oh,
Think about it. Breathe in, breathe out. Whatever you want to do. A little bit of exercise, but yeah, all yours. Go for it.
okay, great. Yeah, just give me a second to kind of frame and structure everything.
Sure.
Um,
You can
yeah,
ask me
I think
questions. You can ask me questions if you want to like
I
inform
will
you.
down. I will be asking questions because
Okay, this
I'll
is a
forget
long thread, my
what
friends. Take your notepads out and
yeah,
like start writing. Okay, cool. Shoot.
yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think firstly, it's important to understand that there are going to be two things that you're going to be doing. One is doing things that don't scale, and one is doing things that do scale. I'll give you an example of things that doing things that don't scale, and my personal example. This is for the first 1,000 followers, and obviously, the question is about how to get those. I'll talk about that. But for the first 1,000 followers, I DM'd every single person as long as I thought they were legit. Like obviously, sometimes you have, I mean, anonymous accounts can be legit as well. But as long as I thought that this person would be like cool to have a chat with,
Mm.
I DM'd them, and I was the person who took the initiative. Some people like taking the initiative. Most people won't be taking the initiative either because they're busy or they're shy. And you taking that initiative is obviously they're going to respond, right? Because if they're shy, they're going to respond because they're already quite surprised that this person's reaching out to me. Might as well have a conversation with this person. So that has been a great driving factor in terms of growth, and it's kind of counterintuitive to think about it, but think about this: when you're having these conversations, these are the super fans, these are your friends that are going to be putting you on lists on those accounts to follow,
Yes.
right? Like that's not the way you want to grow, but it's happening passively while you're sleeping. People are going to be putting you on lists,
Mm.
right? And not just like their own tweets, but under other people's tweets, giving you exposure. giving you just visibility,
mm,
right? So that's one thing that again, it's kind of counterintuitive, because like it's doing things that don't scale,
mm.
but in the future it will scale because you'll be being put on lists while you're sleeping.
Right.
So it is, at the end, it's going to turn into doing things that do scale. But that's one example. um okay, let's kind of start with, around, we're at around 250 to 500 followers, where we
Well,
don't already have that
let's take it a little
distribution.
forward. Let's fast forward, because I think somebody who I don't want to like cater to people who can't even get to 1,000, because then I feel like
Okay.
myself, like I'm sitting at 970 something, and I need to put in the work, and I need to like sort of figure my shit out and like really get my game going, right? I feel we should start at that point where somebody's already put in some work, so that there's actually some,
Okay.
because I think getting to 250 to 1,000 in itself is like one entire conversation, and then from
Yeah,
there
that.
onwards it just sort of moves into a slightly different space. So just think of like 1,000, 1,500, and then take it from there.
Okay, cool. So at this point, you've already realized that what type of creator are you? Are you a creator who has a lot of expertise in a certain niche, a certain topic that you can share insights from, or are you the second type of creator where you're going to be followed, you're going to be rewarded, you're going to be getting engagement for your labor,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So I'll give you an example. So I think you're a person of expertise,
mm,
right? So we were having a conversation about podcasting. You're growing a podcast, you have a lot of insights about it, how to grow it, how to get people on, how to get people on, how to schedule them. You've got all of that knowledge. Maybe you've been working on this for months and years. You're in that first bracket. You're a first bracket of creators. That's why people are going to be following you. A lot of people are in the
okay
second bracket.
guys,
I
by
didn't have a
the
lot
way
of experience.
okay guys, by the way, I also like do some business. Okay, I have to send Adit
Yeah,
a profile of mine. Okay, sorry, yeah, go for it, Adit.
yeah,
Sorry. Not this podcast. Okay, yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
All
So
right.
so you can be sharing a lot of that stuff as well,
Yep.
like, so that's what you'd be followed for.
Mm,
And so you have to kind of determine that, are you being followed for curation, are you being followed for finding a lot of content online, summarizing videos, because a lot of people are doing that as well.
mm,
And that's completely fine, because you're being followed for your labor. You're consistently providing people with insights, and you're being followed for your labor. So once you've determined that, and I think it becomes less hazy as you're growing. So at 1,000 followers, you should probably already know why people are following you. And this is what you want to be doing. At 1,000 followers, you already have kind of that inbuilt distribution, where you're going to be, kind of getting 30 likes, 40 likes on a thread itself. um, you want to start building out connections with people that are at around maybe 5,000 to 10,000 followers.
mm,
And it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult, as long as you're taking initiative, as long as you're not being spammy and just initiating conversation, and just hanging out and not looking for something in return.
mm,
And I know, again, this is quite interesting to think about, because you want to build out that connection before you ask for something ever.
mm.
And this can be, it's for some people it's weeks, some people it's months, and this is quite like a common concept in business as well. I'm sure you know about this. Like, first make friends before you start doing a lot of businessy talks with them.
Yep.
So it goes down that route. And I think one of the best ways that I've shared this quite publicly as well, is sending video DMs. You
Mm,
add that layer of trust, that layer of voice as well, that's lacking on the platform.
yes.
Obviously, that gap is being narrower and narrower day by day, because of Twitter Spaces and the voice tweets. But I think they're still very underused. So that's your sign of, like, go ahead and send a video DM and connect with someone much better. And it's quite intriguing. I've never not watched a video DM, because
Mm,
I'm like, what is this? And always complement it with a message alongside the video DM, which I forget to advise very often, but it's important, because you want to let people know that it's a message saying hi. Because if they don't have the time to watch a 50-second video, they have time to read maybe, a 10-second message, and they can still respond. um so that's one thing. That's one side. While you're on the side, you're building connections. On the other side, you're going to start writing threads, right? And again, comes down on the two different brackets. If it's expertise, you're going to be writing threads, kind of breaking down what's happening in your business, how you guys are planning to grow, or how you guys have grown in the past, that adds social proof. There is a lot of lot of dimensions. In fact, it's a great way to plug your business as well. Because think about it, you're breaking down your business, you're giving people exposure to your business, you're telling them what you do. And if someone who's reading it is interested in, they're going to reach out to you, aren't they?
Mm.
So that's one thing. Or write threads on doing labor. So summarizing things, sharing those things with your followers, with your inbuilt audience. And now that you've kind of already started building those connections with one, people that are slightly larger than you in terms of following, and two, with also your existing followers, because you
Mm.
want those existing followers to become like kind of friends, to become super fans, because your friends are your super fans. I still till date right now, um I got some friends that I met like very early on, like first month of Twitter,
Mm.
and they started creating. They maybe kind of stopped creating on Twitter, but they started creating on YouTube, and
Mm.
I like rave about it. Like I go crazy when they drop a YouTube video.
Mm.
Like I'm the biggest fans, right? And that's because of those conversations, those friendships, and that similar mindset that we have, right?
Right.
So two people you want to be interacting with, people slightly larger than you, and people that are genuinely interactive and initiating conversation in your under your tweets.
Mm. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other things that you think we shouldn't do when it comes to how we're approaching this? Of course, the spammy stuff, yes, but I have noticed a few things. So I'm going to allow you to go first, and then I'll make an observation just to add to what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing I wanted to add actually before I go into things that you shouldn't be doing. One thing is just get the basics down, and by basics I mean your bio should be top notch. Your profile should be quite clear. It doesn't have to be professional. Like we're not on LinkedIn. It can be you laughing. Like that's not a problem. But just make sure that it's clear, it's you. If it's an anonymous account as well, it has some form of, like, it has a symbol or a sign. Like there's a reason why you're putting that profile, right? And there are tons of resources. I don't have to talk about that. There are tons of
Yeah, yeah,
resources
yeah.
on optimizing bio and profiles and stuff, right?
Sure.
But let's go get into things you shouldn't be doing. And to be very honest, a lot of these things I've learned by doing them. So
Sure.
if you're doing them, don't be ashamed. It's just time to learn, right? So um, one thing that I used to do is I used to tag a lot of accounts, um, and I realized how annoying it can get,
Mm.
because I didn't understand the Twitter algorithm back then. I didn't understand how Twitter shows notifications. I personally don't have notifications on my Twitter. I have it on my computer, but not on my mobile device. But some people might. Some people that I've been tagging might have their notifications on, and I just realized how annoying that could be, right?
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to think from the other person's perspective. Sometimes we're thinking we're doing best for them, but it's difficult to think from that perspective, right? So that's one thing that I've heard, that I've experienced. Another thing is always being quite considerate and polite via DMs, considerate of their time. Sometime recently, this has been happening. People, follow up way too soon. People follow up 3 hours later,
Mm.
and it's completely fine if it's something urgent. But if it's like a question that you have, especially if I've answered it in the past somewhere, then it's like, it's just kind of me repeating myself,
Mm.
and also them constantly bombarding me with messages. So
Yep.
that's another thing. But yeah, I'd love to. You said you had some thoughts on this topic as well. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, like, a couple of observations. So, of course, the just to add to your point that you said about the follow ups and people follow up too soon. Guys, I'm 31. Okay, others like 19. Okay, and uh, I was like, okay, I've sent him a DM for the podcast, but it wasn't like, hey, I need to reply right now. I think I probably like sent you a, like, tagged you on that probably, like, I think a month and a half or 2 months, or I don't know, something like that. It's like a lot, the good 30-40 days later.
Yeah, yeah,
And not out of anything, but I'm like, I don't know if he's seen it or not seen it or whatever. So I'm like, okay, cool. I just like left a DM and then I forgot about it. Like in normal course, and I'm like, okay, whenever he gets around to it, he'll get it. So I think it's like you, you know, the world isn't waiting for you to get up and be like, hey, come to my podcast, or like come and do business with me. I think that's what everybody needs to understand when they're on these platforms, is that everybody's there for their own self. It's not like they're coming in
yeah,
there and serving you. It's like everybody, including famous accounts and whatever, they're there for themselves. So you gotta be like, you gotta take your chances, but not like make it too annoying. So I just think that you can be very patient, even if it's somebody, not necessarily just a bigger account, but even if somebody who's just starting off or whatever. It's just like you just gotta behave in a way. At least in the DMs in Twitter, you can like generally. A lot of people have a shit posting strategy, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just feel it's a way to sort of play around with things, but like like people have done a really good job with that. Like so, look at Turno Novak with Banana Capital thing that he's been doing, out there. He's a VC with like TikTok videos and shit posting and funny stuff and all of that. Just made a reputation for himself, right? So it just
Yeah,
depends, how you play it overall. There are some people who are very opinionated, very expressive. So, but in general, you can like if you're going to come in there on the platform and be like, yeah, I'm here for like 10 days and leave. It's just like people because there are a lot of people who do that. So I think
yeah,
you gotta like stick around to like get the benefits. I think a lot of people put in the work and then they just leave. Actually, right about the time when they start, where they would have gotten the benefits. That's
yeah,
one I just want to add. The thing I feel you shouldn't do for sure is um, I think you got to, we're going to slightly diverge on this sort of tactic or like strat overall, but I feel there are two kinds of people when it comes to DMs. Okay, there's one kind of person who would love to connect with you as a conversation thing. Okay, it's like let's say, so imagine if you sent a DM to like I don't know who's a famous person that like a lot of people know. So let's say Gary Vaynerchuk. Okay, now the point is
mm,
he doesn't want to hang out with you. Okay, he's got enough people to hang out with. He's got too many people to hang out with, right? So
yeah,
you got to understand that when you're like approaching people, that okay, out of those 1,000 people or 2,000 people or 5,000 people, maybe one of them like really big accounts follow you, but then you know sometimes it just makes sense to like go straight to your point. And I've seen a lot of like especially for dealing with business owners, especially, okay, or like investors, or they're not there to hang out with you and make friends with you and send you cookies and like become like this very invite you to some new year party, right? That's not how Twitter works. Okay, it might work for some very like let's say small cases here and there, but you're reaching out to somebody who's established. It's like me reaching out to like a big person or like very accomplished person. So they've got a very small window as well. And so you got to also figure out that okay, it's not just connecting. Okay, ultimately you've connected, fine, great, very good stuff. So what do you want from me now? And I get a lot of people who will DM and ask me a silly question like in the third message, and then I know this is going sideways because I gave them my time, we spoke,
yeah,
we connected, and then after that I'm like, where is the ask? Right? Where is the either the ask or like just get to the point. I'm like, either I'll say no or yes or whatever, and not even like
yeah,
let's say that big to be able to be like, yeah, okay, yes or no. But I just feel you should craft your offer or your ask well in advance before you even start to sort of let's say get to the point of DMing somebody, because I think you miss your shot and then it's in your DMs like as a as a track record of and then people just like put
it
you in
is.
some, yeah, and then people put you in this bucket where I don't want to hang out with this guy because he's like I don't want to listen to them. So I just feel like there should be a bit more prep when you're especially approaching like the bigger accounts, and you should have something substantial, because if you don't, it's okay not to DM. There's no compulsion in DMing to the point where you actually don't have anything to either offer or ask. Because I think life is short and like business cycles are very short and like time generally is like, so if I for example message Sahil Bloom out of out of the let's say just generally, and I'm like, hey, nice to connect with you. Okay, fine, he'll be polite, but just because he's a nice guy. But okay, what after that?
Yeah,
Yeah, what after that? what
that's
what
true.
what happens after the brainstorming is done? What happens after that? And I've learned that the hard way as well over the years. Like that's why I like the podcast format, because it actually allows like ideas to come out. This is actually a better way to I think there's a better way to actually do that. So like if you're networking, do it in public. So say, okay, hey, I don't know, just like what is the other day? There's a guy on Instagram who did like 15-second podcast or 10, 20-second podcast and stuff, which is brilliant. Like
Oh,
if you want to reach out to like big accounts, I think maybe Gary Vaynerchuk mentioned it, but there's been this guy called Harry is branding or something like that, like maybe about a year and a half back, and he started with what, a 10-second podcast or something like that. And I've seen a lot of other people do it as well. It's a very cool strategy. And it's not just a strategy, it's a very cool thing because you're giving somebody space. That person, you ask them one question, and then the person can answer that one question. You can then feature it in whatever you're doing, and you can actually brand it that way or call it that. I really like that thing. We haven't done it yet because we have a slightly longer form podcast, but for sure. Like just imagine if you could reach out to, I don't know, I mean, just think of like Joe Rogan, or like I don't know, just think of, I don't know, Mike Tyson, Gary Vee, or like all the. Just imagine they're like 10 seconds, because that's all they've got to give you, and you know for a fact they're never going to agree for a big podcast with you, for a fact,
Yeah.
right? But you know that, okay, maybe there's a shot somewhere with maybe not as big of an account, but maybe slightly smaller, maybe slightly sideways. Could be one of those things where they're like, okay, cool, you know what, I'm trying to promote something, so yeah, okay, fine, you know, my new book is coming out, so I just quickly do a 10 second. How much is 10 seconds? Not much for like somebody like that, but for you that's like
Yeah. Yeah.
very valuable. But it's good to like at least prepare and then go into the game, because even at a small level, you know, even at a small account level, you want to make sure that, you know, but you don't want to waste the opportunity is what I think. Like, you know, there's always that window that you can. It's better to like not make a fool of yourself, I think, than, you know, be like, hey, what's up? Like there was this person who, you know, sent me a text and or a DM, and I'm like he's like, so how do you manage all these things all together? And I said, I'll put it on a, it's a nice question, so I'll put it on a YouTube video and like make a video for you, which is again like, I'm actually like, he should be like, yeah, very cool. What he's saying is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but just let me know the context, or like, you know, he gave me this very weird, and I'm like, bro, I'm sure to shoot a video for you, okay, you answer your
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
put it up on YouTube,
Yeah.
okay, that's a lot of work. And then he's still not like, you know, and then he just drops and vanishes. There's one more person who had messaged saying, hey, nice to connect with you. I sent a message back saying, hey, nice to connect with you. I actually went through your profile, went to your YouTube channel, checked out your content, really like what you're doing. And and then he comes back with, oh, but like the most important question is, are you a subscriber? And then he says, hey, and
No way.
he said that, and then you know what happened after that is he didn't say anything after that. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I mean, I don't like what just happened. So I think what's happening
Yeah.
a lot of like, just because people are available, right, in such like, let's say, convenient ways, that there is not much thought going into, you know, actual, like, what am I reaching out to this person for? Okay, and like, because you know what, like the small account that's under 1,000 followers, or like maybe just at 300 followers, maybe that dude's like, I don't know, 100 million worth. Okay, and maybe he's like the guy who can like, or the girl or whatever, can give you like the best big opportunity next, just that you don't know about it, because you just think, oh, 300 followers must be like some shit account, right? You don't approach it like that, but actually that could be the person who could unlock the next 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
So it just depends on like, you know, the level of prep that you do. Even in these kinds of situations, I actually prefer the prep, when doing this, rather than just like, and don't leave like people cold turkey on DMs, guys. Like, don't. This is not a dating app. It's a professional thing. You know, if you're gonna not reply, then just don't even start the conversation. Because then at least the guy knows you're not actually doing that. So that's been my experience. Like, when speaking to
Yeah.
people on DMs, that have a full conversation, at least some appropriate level of conversation, and then you can choose not to continue. But I just feel it needs to be a bit more prep than just like, let's open the DM conversation and, you know, go for it. So yeah, some little bit of extra stuff from my Twitter experience there.
Extra masala.
Extra masala, yeah, extra masala for all the desis in the house. Cool. All right. Normally, what I do is I ask people about books and the people, but then we end with this thing where I actually didn't do it in the last one, but this one I'll go with. It's like, okay, Adit, one piece of advice. Okay, it's a horrible question and like the toughest spot I can ever put you in, because you're the Twitter thread guy,
Okay.
which is like some thousand things in there. But what's the one thing that you would tell somebody listening to you right now if they came to you and said, Adit, tell us what to do, or like, you know, one piece of advice? There's only one. There's no other. Like, you can't like retract. There's no tactic or strategy. This is like the thing that you would tell this guy, and that's it. They would go and live their life after that. So what would that be? Could be to a 19-year-old, could be to a 25-year-old, could be it to help you out. I would be like, okay, it's in the context of Twitter, okay, or as a young creator, I can give you a little bit of that as well. So you can like, you know, choose. So
Okay.
what's that one piece of advice that I would give them?
So this is to a young creator, if I'm not mistaken.
You can choose to a young creator or somebody who's just like, let's say, want to grow on Twitter. I'm giving you both options.
Um. Okay. I'll say this. It's just very tactical because I don't want to be cheesy. I had something cheesy in my mind, but it's basically writing Twitter threads to just kind of deconstruct your philosophies, how you think about the world, how you think about businesses, if this is your niche. Obviously, if your niche is something else. But I think writing Twitter threads is a great way to kind of deconstruct your thinking. And and now this is going to come to the cheesy part, and I'm not cheating, I'm not giving you another piece of advice. I'm just it's going to basically help you hang around um, smart people, extremely driven people, and people that have a similar mindset. So that's what the advice would be. You know, hang around smart and all of the hang around these type of people. But I think I wanted to take I wanted to take a tactical approach, which is writing Twitter threads to deconstruct your thinking, because that's what the result will lead to, right? So it's basically put your thoughts out there. Essentially, that's the general advice, and that's what I did 1 year ago. And you know, I'm grateful for taking that piece of that piece of advice, like listening to myself there, and taking action on that, because this entire network and those kind of how do you say, you know, the domino effects
Hmm.
from that have been phenomenal. And I've really been enjoying that.
Perfect. That's a very Aadit way of summing up one piece of advice into a thread of advice. It's like
Yeah.
7 things I think you should do to like
I found a loophole. I found a loophole into giving three different pieces of advice.
just don't end the
I
sentence.
had
Like
to.
that's a lot of people do. They just don't end the sentence. They're like, yeah, one more and one more and one more. I'm like, yeah, keep on bringing it on. We love all that. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it, guys. Adit, it was brilliant to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much. You were like humble, but you were also, and I don't want to do it as a checklist of like, oh, you were humble, but I just like feel you speak from whatever your experience is. I don't speak anything outside of that, which I need to learn from. But really, really cool stuff. And thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you so much, Harlaksh, for having me. I think your energy is fantastic, man. I really need to hang around more people like yourself, just to kind of, you know, pump me up. In fact, this is a great kind of, you know, just pre thing to go before the gym. So I'm just kind of like pumped up, and I'm gonna go lift some weights. So thank you so much for this conversation, man.
Let's
Has been
do
a
it.
blast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adit.